of Elea. Also known as Hyel or Velia, is an ancient city in Lucania, now in Italy, located about 25 miles southeast of Paestum. It was home to a philosophical school known as the Eleatic school, whose representatives included Parmenides and Zeno. The city was founded around 535 BC by Greek refugees from Phocaea, who seized land from the native Oenotrians. A paradox is a statement that seems contradictory or contrary to our expectations. Although it may make logical sense and be based on true premises, it leads to a conclusion that appears contradictory or unacceptable. Paradoxes of Zeno of Elea. Zeno of Elea circa 490–430 BC was a philosopher who studied motion and was a student of Parmenides. His paradoxes aim to prove that the motion we perceive is merely an illusion and cannot exist in reality. Here are some of his most important paradoxes. 1. Dichotomy Paradox. A runner who wants to cover a certain distance cannot even start. He must first cover half the distance to the goal, but before he can do that, he must cover half of that half, and so on, ad infinitum. As a result, he is unable to leave the starting point. 2. Achilles and the Tortoise. Achilles, who runs twice as fast as Tortoise, allows the Tortoise to start with a head start. However, Achilles will never catch up to the Tortoise. When he reaches the point from which the Tortoise started, the Tortoise has already moved ahead. Each time Achilles reaches the Tortoise's previous position, the Tortoise is further along. Achilles can only get closer but will never overtake the Tortoise. 3. The Arrow Paradox. An arrow shot from a bow never reaches its target. Although it seems to be moving, at any given moment it occupies a specific position, meaning it is at rest. Since time consists of moments, and the arrow is at rest at every moment, it follows that it is at rest throughout the entire time. Therefore, it is impossible for the arrow to be both in motion and at rest simultaneously. 4. The Stadium Paradox. Imagine a chariot race. The chariots move in opposite directions, and their speed seems to be simultaneously the same and different, lesser and greater, depending on which other chariots are being considered. If motion occurs at a speed that is simultaneously such and not such, then it is contradictory and cannot exist. Here is a schematic representation. Chariot A is stationary, while chariots B and C are moving on different tracks at the same speed in opposite directions. The relative speed at which B and C pass each other is twice that at which each of them passes A. The remaining paradoxes of Zeno. 1. Paradox of measure. Zeno argues that every magnitude is divisible. This means it can be divided into increasingly smaller parts. If something is infinitely divisible, it can be divided into an infinite number of parts. Each of these parts must also have some magnitude. If these infinite parts have zero magnitude, then the whole, composed of such parts, would also have to have zero magnitude. On the other hand, if these parts have finite magnitude, then the whole, composed of an infinite number of such parts, must have infinite magnitude, which also seems absurd. Thus, we arrive at a contradiction. A magnitude cannot be both devoid of magnitude and infinite. 2. Paradox of quantity. If a multitude exists, it must be both finite and infinite in quantity. If there are as many things as there are, then their quantity should be finite. However, between any two things, there is always a third, and between them are more, and so on. Therefore, the number of existing things is unbounded. 3. Paradox of place. The paradox of place concerns the concept of place and space. Zeno argues that if everything that exists occupies some place, then that place must also have its own place, and so on, leading to infinity. This introduces a contradiction because there is no end to these places, which seems logically problematic. 4. The heap paradox. The name sorites comes from the Greek word soros, meaning pile or heap. Sorites' paradoxes illustrate the problem that a single grain of wheat does not make a heap, nor do 2 grains, 3 grains, etc. However, at some point, the collection of grains becomes large enough to be called a heap, but there is apparently no definite point where this occurs. 5. Paradox of sowing. This paradox concerns the perception of sounds during the sowing of seeds. It assumes that when a single seed is sown, there are no auditory sensations. This leads to the conclusion that when a larger number of seeds are sown, the perceived noise must be merely an illusion. Zeno's paradoxes remain relevant, provoking thought about what movement and time mean. Contemporary philosophy and science still pose the questions that Zeno raised centuries ago, which makes him one of the most important thinkers in the history of philosophy.